knowing what your own bottlenecks are and where your own skills gaps are, and whether or not you are the person that is ultimately most equipped to continue to grow your own company.
Sure. Pop culture's become obsessed with entrepreneurship stories from Silicon Valley and big startup. But the backbone of our economy is made of small, local businesses. Every day, millions of small business owners deliver quality products and services, support the local economy, employ their neighbors, and follow their passion. We think their stories are worth telling. I'm Angela Jovine. Welcome to the Extraordinary Small Business Podcast. Today on the show, how Tom Kulzer has grown AWeber from a one-man operation into one of the leading providers of email marketing software in the industry. This episode is brought to you by WP Engine. When you enter the AWeber headquarters, you might do a double take. This tech company has all the makings of a fun workspace. Game rooms, fitness spaces, red retro British phone booths, unique lounge furniture in bright sunny corners. A chef-led cafeteria full of free food that is healthy and delicious. There's even a slide in the main atrium. No, you're not in Silicon Valley. You're in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Did venture capitalists provide funds for this space? Nope. It all started with one man, Tom Kulzer. How did Tom grow from a college student with a side hustle to business leader and CEO in the email marketing space, completely free from outside investors? We sat down to take a look at his journey. Tom, it's nice to meet you in person, and thank you for having me here to AWeber.
Certainly. Likewise. Thanks for having me.
This is the second time I've been here on campus. This is such a great office you've put together here. It feels like, you can totally tell we're in a tech company here.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool space.
You've got the chef, the slides, all of the cool living space areas.
Yeah, 3 chefs, 2 slides, lots of plants, lots of cool people.
Lots of bright colors. We're sitting in a lime green room.
Very calming, right?
Very calming, very soothing. Not stimulating at all.
No, not at all.
So you've been in this office now for 10 years?
No, not quite 10 years. Probably 7-ish, maybe 8. I don't know. Time flies.
And it's a pretty big office. How many employees do you have here?
There's about 110 of us.
110.
Yeah.
So let's back up. AWeber is your baby. You started it as a one-man show in what year?
98.
1998. And give us the story behind how you started AWeber.
Sure. So I graduated high school in 96. So to give you some chronology there. And so I was going to mechanical engineering school at Penn State, switched majors to finance. In the process, was never really into school that much, just not my thing. I like to go and do. And I was selling wireless modems on the side. And
at State College?
No, I had changed majors. And when I changed majors, I changed schools.
Got it.
I was going to community college in Maryland. I'd graduated high school just outside of Baltimore. But I was selling wireless modems. So this was back when we still had dial-up. They weren't fast, but it was like bleeding edge technology then. And during that process, I had developed kind of an email follow-up series because I was essentially a salesperson.
And there was no such thing as easy back then. So you had to code it, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And well, it was just me sending manual emails.
Oh, okay.
And while I was in school, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I didn't know any coding, but it was always something that I was kind of interested in. So I taught myself enough Perl code to be able to automate a series of email follow-up messages that when somebody inquired when I went to a conference or trade show or something, I would send those out automatically over a period of a couple of months. And it worked really well. And I ended up sharing it with a bunch of other people that were also selling the same product in different areas of the country.
Oh, okay.
And over time, it became one of those things where it worked really well for a bunch of us, and they would give feedback on what worked and what didn't, and they would tweak their messages and so forth. And I ended up leaving that company to focus on school because, that's important. Your parents kind of push you for that. Right. And all those people started coming to me and saying, hey, can I get this email thing that you were doing? And I was like, maybe I can do that instead of bussing tables on the side, which is what I was doing after that. So it was kind of, the idea was spurred through that sales process. And then it was just a demand. It was a problem that existed that there wasn't any other solution for, and people were willing to pay for it. And I was like, hey, sounds like a good idea. So I took a year off from school, and 21 years later, I've still taken a year off from school.
And what was your first product?
It was an email marketing solution for following up with sales contacts. So when somebody inquired, you could send a series of emails over a course of days and weeks.
So it was a software where you could enter the emails that you wanted to.
It was very early marketing automation, which is what most people know of it today. But it's all email marketing automation back in the day.
And how did you pick the name AWeber? I've always wondered.
It was originally Automated Web Assistant, which is a really long company name or even a product name. So it just kind of gotten shortened, and through testing and so forth with some other folks that were beta testing the software with me, we just kind of shorthanded called it AWeber. Yeah. Because Automated Web Assistant, if you shorten that down, it kind of turns into AWebass. Yeah. And you can't really name your company that. No, you can't. So it became AWeber. Automated Web Assistant is kind of where it originated from, which is why the A and the W are capitalized. It's kind of a little FedEx action as well, because the kerning between the A and the W looks better when they're both capitalized than when the W is lowercase. It just looks weird when it's lowercase.
That's the branding people told you.
Yeah. Totally. Which was me.
Exactly. Right. Well, to that point, you were on your own as a one-man show for how long?
2 years. 2 years. Like a year and a half, 2 years.
Would you call that, it was like proof of concept? That's when you were really figuring out if this would work, or you knew pretty early on?
No, I had like 1,500 customers, almost 2,000 customers before I hired our first team member.
Wow. I mean,
I didn't sleep much.
Yeah. I was going to say, how do you even serve that many people at one time? That's crazy.
So during the day you do customer service.
Right.
And at night you do everything else.
Right. I mean, thinking back on that at the time, were you single, no children?
Yeah, I was very single.
Not a lot of constraints on your time.
Yeah. I was a competitive cyclist. So I was either riding my bike or I was working.
Okay.
Or sleeping a little bit in there.
Right. So how soon did you know this is going to work? I'm going to stick with this.
It's, within that first year, I was like, hey, this is really good. Like, I'm probably making more now than I would off in a mechanical engineering job or a finance job at that point. Like, I was doing pretty well pretty quickly, especially for a young 20-something. It just turned into, okay, how do I grow this? What's the next step? How do you hire somebody? That's scary. Now I'm responsible for somebody else's livelihood.
Yes, somebody else's mortgage payments and car payments. That's not something to take lightly, for sure. Now, you said you had almost 2,000 clients before you hired your first employee. I have to ask, naturally, I would think earlier on you would have thought, I need help. You had people paying you for your product. What stopped you from hiring someone earlier?
Time more than anything.
Training.
It was time to train somebody new. And it was also kind of that fear aspect, or a little bit of that unknown aspect of hiring people is things that big businesses do. And that sounds complicated.
Right.
That's scary. And now I'm responsible for somebody else's livelihood.
Right.
It felt like a bigger commitment than it ultimately turned out to be.
Right.
Ultimately, when I got down to actually doing it, it was a lot easier than I thought it was.
Right.
But it's kind of that fear thing on doing anything new. I think most people are fearful of new things. It's scary.
100% fear of the unknown.
And that's, even today I talk about fear a lot in what we do here, because if you're not a little anxious, if you're not a little fearful, you're not growing. If you're doing the same thing every day, you're really comfortable. Ultimately, if you're comfortable, you're going to expect the same results that you got the day before. So if you ultimately want to get better results or different results, you have to do something different than you did the day before, which is scary
100%.
And fearful. It makes a lot of sense when you just say it out loud, but I don't think a lot of people really
We're just
think
all
like that.
Wired to just have this fear of failure, or that failure as wrong.
Yeah.
They talk about how, when 2-year-olds are learning to walk, or 1-year-olds are learning to walk, they fall down. They get right back up. They don't think, oh, I fell down, so I guess I should never learn to walk. That doesn't happen. You have to get up again. But somewhere along the line between 1 and your 20s, it's beaten into you that you should not fail. And
Yeah.
so you have to kind of undo all of that psychology in your head.
Totally.
I totally get that. I mean, speaking from my point of view, like as a fellow entrepreneur, I've tried for myself as a personal goal to try to take bigger swings because it is so comfortable to just say, I know this works. I'll do this again and again and again.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I was successful. I was mildly successful, but could I be more successful if I
Sure.
take this big swing? But also, you have to expect that if you take those bigger swings, you're also going to see a couple failures, and that you just have to go into it knowing that that's just math. Like that's probability. That's the way
totally.
it works.
I tell our team, and I don't know if it's confidence building or not, but like I regularly make the wrong decision because I have to make a whole bunch of wrong decisions in order to get to the right decision. Like I don't have some like magic wand that I can wave that I'm always right.
Right. The algorithm told me to do this. Yeah.
My wife would tell me something otherwise that I think, but you think you're always right. It was at the time you think you're right.
Right.
But you're ultimately going to be wrong an awful lot. And you have to be ready to accept that like, yeah, I'm wrong. I'll admit I was wrong.
And that's how you learn.
Okay, here's the next thing we're going to try.
Fail fast and all of that.
Yep.
So early on, since you started on your own, did you need a lot of capital to start the business, or was really not that capital intensive?
Kind of as things grew, it became more capital intensive, but I started on my Penn State credit card that I had at the time, maxed it out, and just kind of went from there. And then it was just bootstrapped off of self-finance of income from the business, helped grow the business.
Right. So how long before you gave yourself a paycheck if you were self-financing? Were you always able to pay yourself in the beginning?
Like 22 at the time, so it doesn't cost a whole lot to live on. You know, I had a roommate, and you know, my biggest expense was probably travel for cycling, and I did that with a group of other people. And you know, you pile 4 dudes in one hotel room, and it was you can live cheap at that age.
Ramen noodles, McDonald's, all
exactly.
Of that.
So not McDonald's. That's not good for cyclists, but
that's true.
Lots of chicken, lots of noodles. So not expensive to live.
Not expensive to live. So you were able to pay yourself modestly from the beginning and then use the rest of it to just plow it back in the business. At what point would you say that you started to have like a vision, like for the future of the company versus just like this is working right now?
That got to be more of a serious concern as I started to have more and more team members. Because you have to impart that vision to them so that they know like they have something to believe in. They see a future there. They see growth and they see the strategy on how it is that you're going to get from A to B. You know, I think that has been more developed over the years and it's constantly being refined.
That's such a skill to have. I mean,
it's not a perfect science. And, you know, I always like to save them too. Like I'll save what I've written down and distribute it to the team and what we've talked about with the team. And I'll go back to them. And it's like, oh, I was right on that and that and that. And yeah, no, we totally whiffed on this and this and this.
Right, right. But being just able to map your own enthusiasm and motivation onto another person, that is...
Which is a big part of growing a team.
Big part of the team. And that's a really hard thing to learn as a leader. I mean, that's the soft side of it, right? You can hire someone to code. You can hire someone who has bookkeeping experience or accounting experience, but you can't teach someone how to think like you.
So I'd say almost what you're kind of getting at is it's almost that company culture kind of thing. And everybody talks about culture. I like to define company culture as what people do when I'm not here, how they make decisions when I'm not here. And, you know, I'm not involved in an awful lot of our decisions these days, which is a good thing. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't need to be a part of all of those decisions. And that's part of what helps a company grow and flourish is the ability for others to make those decisions. But I think our company culture and our values are what allow our team members to make the right decision. You know, I talk about, this is an analogy that I don't even remember who years ago told me this, know the water line. And so think of a sailboat. If you get a hole in the sail, you put some duct tape over it, keep sailing, you know, nothing bad's going to happen. You get a hole in the side of the boat, some water might splash in or something like that, but it's above the water line, so it's okay. But if the hole is below the water line, it's all hands on deck. Everybody needs to act quickly and figure out what's going on there. So like we talk about those decisions of like, is that an above the water line or below the water line kind of decision? If it's above the water line, go for it. Make the decision. Yeah. But if it's going to potentially sink the ship,
captain should probably be involved.
We should probably talk about it at a higher level.
Right. So. I love that idea of culture being what people do and act when you're not around, because that's how you really know if what you're trying to instill is happening.
Sure.
What's happening when mom and dad go out and the babysitter's here, so to speak. That's really really
totally
what you're saying. I love that idea. And I mean, you can tell from just walking around, there's really a certain culture here that you have cultivated.
Hopefully. It's always a work in progress.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because you are technology and you're not geographically located in like a technology hub of the country.
But what makes a technology hub?
True.
I think it's just, about the attitude and so forth that people bring to what they're doing. So I'd say there's a lot of reasons on why you don't want to be located in a technology hub per se. So, or at least what most people would think of as technology hub. My dad actually is our CFO.
Oh, is he?
He moved here from San Francisco. He lived in San Francisco for 20 plus years. And he moved here, I don't know what it is now, like 4 or 5 years ago. And like, he loves it here compared to living in San Francisco. Like he'll go on and on now about how much better it is being here than out in San Francisco. So no diss on San Francisco. I love visiting.
It's not about where you are. It's just the common thought. That's the common conception around what people think. If you're technology, you have to be you have to be in Boston, or
it's hard to hire great people wherever you are. Mm-hmm. So it's not any easier, even if you are in those hubs. In my opinion.
So your dad is your CFO, but he has not always been your CFO?
No.
How long has he been with the business?
4 or 5, maybe 6 years now. So a little bit of part-time here and there before that.
Wow. So he was a finance guy.
Yes.
He's always been a finance guy.
Yeah, he's always been a finance guy.
When you were 20 and you were starting this business and you have a father who was corporate America, was he going, son, what are you doing? Why aren't you getting a job? Or was he more interested in it and excited about it?
Yeah, he was pretty gung-ho for it. So my mom and my dad had previously had a clothing factory.
Oh, okay.
So they were kind of entrepreneurs in their own right.
So he was corporate, but he had an entrepreneurial.
My mom ran that day to day, but he obviously helped.
What kind of clothing factory?
And it was in like the Lancaster area.
Oh, okay.
And they made mostly like women's clothes and so
Okay.
I was pretty little at that point. So I'd go and hang out with mom and work in the factory and that sort of stuff in the summers. But
so you were pre-programmed.
So yeah, and my grandfather on my mom's side owns a small excavation business, sole proprietor. Mm-hmm. So he was all, and I would go spend summers with him as well and go out on the job and drive the backhoes. Like what little kid doesn't want to get to drive the dump trucks and backhoes? Right. It's still fun as an adult.
Right. So you had a family who was supportive of starting something new, going out on your own. Yeah, entrepreneurship was not an unknown thing. Now, at that time, were your friends kind of going, yeah, like Tom's doing this thing. We don't exactly know what it is, but he's successful? Or your friends kind of understood? I think most people have friends on either spectrum sides. Of that. Yeah, I had the geek friends that were like, dude, that's so cool. And then I had other friends that were like, I don't know, he does something with email. Right. And I find, for me, at least when I was starting, like that early mentorship was just so helpful because when you're starting, you're sort of fragile because it's new and there's a lot of stuff that you're experiencing that you've never experienced before. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you had a really supportive family structure. Who else were your mentors early on that helped you really become the leader you are today? Super early on, it was just a lot of books. Okay. A lot of books, a lot of reading. A number of years into it, I joined a group of internet entrepreneurs. Like a mastermind? Like kind of a mastermind group. And then I joined another group that was actually where I was before we met up today. Oh, really? Locally, yeah, okay. Locally, yeah. Well, it's an international group, but there's a local group. Oh, okay. And I meet with 8 other business owners locally every month to kind of commiserate, hold each other accountable, push each other, and so forth. And it really ranges the spectrum of both business stuff. I think most of us join for business mentorship, but ultimately it ends up involving your entire life. In the business stuff, your family, as well as your own kind of personal well-being, because it is, as an entrepreneur, like it's all encompassing. And it really is. So this mentoring group, it's like peer mentoring, I guess, like everyone is a successful business owner kind of thing. Yes. That's awesome. And you feel like you've gotten a ton out of that.
Oh, absolutely. Like, if there's any like big lesson that I learned kind of early on or that I've learned over the years that I wish I did earlier was joining some sort of mastermind group, have other peers that you can commiserate with. Just like there's a line in the movie Saving Private Ryan where they're walking through the field and all the guys are like complaining about different things. And at one point they're like, hey, Captain, why don't we ever hear you complaining? And it's like, well, complaints go up. Complaints don't go down the chain of command.
Right.
So it's like there's not really someone in our business here that I like complain to or the like really air my grievances. I'm really close with our COO. So like, we tend to do that back and forth there, but like that doesn't tend to get spread out amongst all the rest of the time, which is a good thing. Yeah. And that's part of being a good leader. But it's nice to have that outlet because like, I don't want to go home and like dump all my problems on my wife.
Right.
Because she doesn't have all the insight of, the personalities and so forth here. And it's similarly like
context.
the leadership experience that, from the years of running the business. Whereas when I go to my mentor group, they get that because they deal with it every day themselves and they have different perspectives on how they've solved those issues.
Now, do you find that you said the first one was more focused on digital people, I guess, and then the second one is less so?
Yeah, the first one was basically all your revenue or the vast majority of your revenue needed to come from some sort of online source. So it was a lot of like bloggers and like advertising driven companies where they're getting AdWords, AdSense kind of income. And then there were others that were like software and, had retail shops and those sort of things online. Whereas this group now that I'm a part of, it's all kinds of different businesses. So you're, fast food, real estate, book publishing, salon distribution, like you name it. There's all different kinds of businesses. But at the end of the day, I think one of my biggest takeaways is like we all have vastly different businesses. We all have exactly the same problems.
That's interesting. That was my next question is.
But we all have the exact same kind of problems.
Right. And it probably gives you even better context because it's a variety of different businesses. It kind of helps you have a little bit more of an outside perspective that you can bring in something a little more fresh.
Oh, totally.
To apply to the business. Yeah. That's really
because everybody has a different background. The way that you would solve a problem is different than the way that I'm going to solve a problem because we have unique perspectives and backgrounds of how we've solved those problems before. Right. So being able to kind of compare notes and what the outcome was, did it work? Did it not work? What were the unintended consequences that came? Because everything has a consequence, good or bad. So it's interesting.
So 0 to 2,000 customers. How does that happen? How did you grow early on?
We had and have continued to this day have an advocate affiliate, basically like a reseller type program. Where other businesses that were also our customers at the time could go and refer our service to other people that they knew and make a commission, offering a unique product that just wasn't out there anywhere else. It was something that you do a good job. Word of mouth advertising, it was big. We had a lot of that word of mouth. So those were probably the two biggest things. I didn't do a whole lot of like direct advertising back in the day. We do more of that now.
Now, have you found that growth has been steady? Or were there times where it was a surge and then more of a plateau and a surge and a plateau? And what were some big domino moments that helped you grow that you can remember?
There's so many, like I could talk for hours about this. Like there's so many different things, like whether it's product features, new innovative product stuff that you're doing that drives new customer demand, changes in your pricing and how you price can drive different, different demands, both. You can increase prices and lower demand, but ultimately be more profitable, or decrease prices, have more demand, maybe be less profitable, but ultimately make more because you have the higher demand. So it's, there's a lot of different things, different team members, like having different team members in different roles. I don't do everything anymore. So like having really great folks in marketing or great folks in engineering that are able to push things along faster, better, cheaper, et cetera, than we are now. Customer service and ways that we've iterated on that over the years from, me doing support where it was just email and phones to then adding live chat, that bumps up our availability. So our international market expanded when our support hours expanded there, or when it was easier for them to get in touch with us. Because even back then it was, you had to make an international call. And while that sounds kind of ridiculous now to even really contemplate that, I was a thing when you were paying like
Before
75
voice
cents
over
a minute
IP.
to
Yeah,
call somebody.
Sure.
So it's not really a thing anymore. So not only are people able to get us online, but they can get us anytime, regardless of where they are.
Do you have people in the office 24/7?
Yep, we're a 24/7 operation here.
Awesome.
So
what I think is so interesting about the way you answered that question about growth is that everything you mentioned were internal ways that you guys as a team, your members, increased business, as opposed to we did this thing out in the market and it spiked our growth, or we partnered with this person and we spiked our growth. It's just an interesting, I think you're the first person I've had that's answered it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of the two though. So like, product things spark customer interest.
Yeah.
Those sort of things appeal to those kind of customers. So that's going to increase demand there. So it's not to say that, but you don't get one without the other.
Sure.
You got to develop the thing that the people then get interested in,
the
that are able to push it there. Yeah, exactly.
It's just great to hear. Like, sounds like you're a very product first company.
Yeah, we're
Make
definitely.
the product good.
People
then
generally
we'll work
follow.
on getting people to find it. But that's not the case of every business.
I look at us as like a product and technology company, and helping the people with that product and technology, because the technology that people can't use is kind of useless or don't know how to use or intimidated to use. So making it really accessible, which is part of why we have the support that we do, to other companies that are more marketing driven, where their product is maybe like, but like everybody knows them because they spend all the money that we spend on making our product and support better. They spend it on marketing so people know who they are, but the product is maybe kind of like mediocre.
Right. Yeah. And even before I knew your company, and I would see it in a very specific area, which is like people who are in digital marketing, bloggers. And, and so you got your foothold in with like the super users, so to say, like the experts, core outwards. I'm saying like you established a community of really strong believers in your product first, and then it kind of dissipated, and it probably alleviated some of your marketing needs because these super users are telling people, like you were saying, your affiliate program.
I would say going to conferences earlier than I initially did, if I had to go back in time.
Interesting.
Because a lot of like the affiliate program and just it's a people thing at the end of the day. And how do you meet people? You got to go to conferences to meet, shake hands, and meet, and have a beer in the bar and just get to know people. Yeah, and
as opposed to speaking at a conference, you're saying like if I just
speaking's great, certainly, but early on you may not have the platform or the cachet, the notoriety to be able to even get a speaking slot.
Sure,
that's even changed over the years. Whereas like years ago, like I was the one that was going and speaking at conferences. I very rarely go to conferences now where I'm speaking. I might be in an audience and moving around, but like it's usually our team that's speaking, because it's more about AWeber as the brand and as the knowledge source than me personally. It's
that has to be so satisfying.
Yeah, it is in many ways.
And that conference business has just gotten so big. You could be at a conference every day. You could be at a conference.
Yeah, exactly. You could spend a small fortune going to conferences.
People do.
And yeah, definitely. And even today, like we'll have a booth at some conferences, but a lot of conferences, we just like hang out in the lobby in the bar at night and buy drinks for people. Cause like that, it's so much better of a bonding, and just you get to know people by hanging out with them for 20, 30 minutes and actually have a conversation, understand their business. So that's most of the reason that I go to conferences these days, is to just learn about other people's problems, because then I can come back and we can build something to solve it.
Every small business needs a website. That's not new information. But these days, there are so many easy software options for creating your own website. My personal favorite happens to be WordPress. It's been around since 2003, and it's open source, which means it's free. There's no monthly fee for it. And there are literally thousands, probably millions of people who can work in and develop on WordPress. Today, 36% of the entire internet is built on WordPress. Everyone, from your neighborhood coffee shop and local restaurant to Rolling Stone, the New York Post, to Vogue, and even Disney, are on WordPress. I've hosted my WordPress websites with a number of different companies over the years, and I've been with WP Engine for a while now. Here are the top 3 reasons I love WP Engine. First and foremost, my site just works because At WP Engine, they are 100% dedicated to WordPress websites. That means their servers are configured to optimize performance for WordPress. It just removes so much hassle out of the equation. Number 2, they know WordPress. I used to get so frustrated when something would break on my website. Maybe it was a plugin or a WordPress update, and I'd contact my web host tech support and they'd say, sorry, we don't support WordPress. WP Engine makes it simple to create, update, and manage any WordPress website. And number 3, my personal fave is their 24-hour chat tech support. I have used it countless times. You aren't talking to a bot, you're talking to a person, and they provide actual, real help when you need it over chat. So, if you have a WordPress website, or if you're thinking about moving to one, I highly recommend starting with WP Engine. Listeners of Extraordinary Small Business can get a special offer. Get 10% off any of their hosting plans now. Just head to extraordinarysmallbusiness.com/WP Engine and get 10% off hosting from the masters of WordPress hosting at WP Engine. That's extraordinarysmallbusiness.com/WP Engine. Email is like the OG of digital marketing, right? It's been around since the internet began. It was before social media. It's remained important throughout all of this time, despite the fact there are other ways to market digitally. You still need your email game to be on point. So how has your business and your products really, how have they changed like over time? And also, how do you decide when something is a trend versus like, this is something we need to add in to the product offering?
Wow, there's layers of questions there. As far as like email and just its value in the overall marketing ecosystem, it's interesting to see, back in the day when I started this, AOL was a big thing. Right. And it was very much I call it kind of the walled garden of like you played in the AOL sandbox or you played outside of the sandbox. And social media, in my view, is very much in the same way. Like Facebook has become what a lot of people, especially older folks, understand as the internet is Facebook. Like if they don't get their news on Facebook, they don't see the news. They don't go to news.
You're so right. I never thought about it in comparison to AOL.
And similarly, Instagram and Snapchat and all the different platforms that are out there, Twitter, they all have these own little ecosystems and they make it really hard to kind of break out of it in many ways. They want to pull everyone else into it.
Keep you there.
But once you're there, they make it really hard to go out. So it's interesting over time, obviously there was kind of the ramp up for Facebooks and Twitters and those sort of things. And now a lot of the businesses that kind of